Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Moshmi Beltengady. I'm the program manager for the Tribal Maternal Infant and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program, or Tribal McV. And I'm very happy to be with you all today to talk about the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the Tribal McV Development and Implementation Grants. And I'm joined by my colleague, Carrie Peak, who will also be presenting on today's webinar. Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone, or actually maybe some are in the morning, but it's mostly afternoon for folks now. It's great to be joining you today and be able to share a little bit about our Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement. Thanks.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So once again, this webinar is regarding the funding opportunity for the Tribal Maternal Infant and Early Childhood Home Visiting Tribal McV Program Development and Implementation Grants, and it is funding opportunity number HHS 2023 ACF ECD TH 0187. So thank you all for being with us today, and we look forward to engaging with you on this important Notice of Funding opportunity. So this is a voluntary webinar, and we're really going to be focusing on the information in the Notice of Funding opportunity. We will be posting the recording, transcript, and slides on our website after the webinar in case it's helpful to you to reference after the webinar. So the Notice of Funding opportunity is available on grants.gov. If you go to the main page, you should be able to find it pretty easily by searching for home visiting. The due date for applications is May 1st, 2023, 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So this is the page you'll see on grants.gov for this Notice of Funding opportunity. There's a synopsis of the grant opportunity on the page when you first click on the link to this Notice of Funding opportunity. You'll also see a related documents page, and that's where you will find the Notice of Funding opportunity announcement. It's this document here, FOA content of HHS 0187. So that's really the latest version of the funding opportunity, and that's what you should be referencing when you are working on your application. So the development and implementation grants will support 63-month cooperative agreements. So this is a grant with a 15-month year one, followed by 4 12-month periods. And this cooperative agreement will be between ACF and federally recognized Indian tribes or consortia of tribes, tribal organizations, or urban Indian organizations. And there are several activities that grantees under this program will engage in. First, conducting community needs and readiness assessments. Next, developing the infrastructure and capacity needed for planning and implementing evidence-based home visiting programs for expectant families and families with young children from birth to kindergarten entry. Then providing the home visiting services to pregnant women and families with young children. In addition, there are some data requirements, performance measurement, and continuous quality improvement activities that grantees engage in. And finally, activities to strengthen early childhood systems of support for families with young children. And this funding is intended for tribal entities that don't have prior experience with implementing evidence-based home visiting programs and are not currently operating a program. And there is a separate NOFO out right now, the Tribal McV Grant Program Implementation and Expansion Grants, which is available for entities that have experience and have an existing program that they're seeking to sustain or expand. So we wanted to kind of take you through the key sections of the Notice of Funding opportunity. It's a big document. I'm sure you can see here it's 66 pages. But what we want to do in this webinar is really show you the key pieces of the document that are really going to be relevant for you if you apply for this grant. So we do encourage you to really take a look at the entire NOFO to get an understanding of what it's asking and how to respond. The key sections that we really want to make sure you spend a lot of time looking at include the program description, the eligibility information, the project description, the evaluation criteria. So we'll go through each of those sections over the next few slides. So the first section, which starts on page 3 of the NOFO, is the program description section. And this is really the bulk of the NOFO in terms of what this grant actually is, what it's meant for, what the activities are, and what you can expect if you're funded under this NOFO. So it provides background on the McV program and the Tribal McV program, provides more information about the program and the current grantees and the communities that are part of the program. And then it talks about the required activities. So as I said, it's a 63-month project period. In year 1, which is 15 months, grantees will engage in needs assessment, planning, and capacity building activities, as well as development of an implementation plan. There's also, you'll see in this NOFO, many different italicized terms, and those terms are defined in the appendix of the NOFO, which starts on page 55. So if there are any questions about what is meant by some of those terms, that's a good place to look for some more information. So I mentioned the activities in year 1. Those are going to be described in the program description section. It also talks about the activities in years 2 through 5, which are the implementation of home visiting services, performance measurement activities, continuous quality improvement activities, early childhood system building, and activities to support the McV learning agenda. So really how recipients will engage in activities to continue learning about home visiting in tribal communities. And so, as I said, in year 1, grantees will develop an implementation plan, and in years 2 through 5, they will be implementing the implementation plan and really, providing the evidence-based home visiting services. And as I said, years 2 through 5 are each 12 months. So definitely encourage you to read program description section very carefully. I think it gives a really good overview of what this grant is, what you can expect, and will provide a really great foundation for writing the application for this notice of funding opportunity. Section 2 provides some basic information about what these awards will be. As I said, this will be a cooperative agreement, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We estimate having about $8 million available for this funding opportunity and anticipate making up to 16 awards. The ceiling for awards under this NOFO is $1 million per budget period, and the floor is $250,000 per budget period. And we expect the grants will average about $500,000 per budget period. The project start date under this NOFO is July 1st, 2023. And as the first year is 15 months, it will go through September 29th of 2024. And then following that, each year will go from September 30th to September 29th until the end of the grant. So I mentioned that this is a cooperative agreement, and this is a type of federal award in which substantial federal involvement is anticipated. And in the Tribal McV program, we really see this as meaning that this is really a partnership between the tribal grantee and the federal government, and that we will provide a lot of benefits to the recipient that might not be available under a typical discretionary grant. In particular, there's really an expectation of providing intensive technical assistance and supports to ensure that grantees are successful under this project. And there will be a cooperative agreement negotiated between ACF and the recipient at the time of award, really laying out the respective responsibilities of ACF and the recipient. And more information here is on page 14, giving a description about what exactly a cooperative agreement means. And then the eligible entities for this grant, I mentioned it is intended for entities without prior experience with home visiting and no existing home visiting program, but the actual eligible entities are restricted to federally recognized tribes or a consortium of tribes, tribal organizations, and urban Indian organizations as defined by Section 4 of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. So you'll see on page 15 a pretty detailed definitions of what these eligible entities are. And we do really encourage applicants that are serving emerging, unserved, or underserved populations or remote or geographic areas. And we also support collaborative approaches and interdisciplinary approaches that are part of applications. And now I will turn it over to Carrie to talk more about what needs to be part of the application.
Thanks, Moshmi. So we've made it to section 4 of the application and submission information in the NOFO. This is a really important section to pay close attention to because it's for this application, electronic submissions are required, and unless a paper submission exemption has been received. So you'll be able to find that information here. The electronic application package is available. Packages include the required forms, and the list of required forms are also available on page 24 of the NOFO. So the screenshot that you see here is if you're on grants.gov and you see those tabs at the top, that 4th tab is where you'll find the package information and everything that you're going to need to apply. Please really keep in mind this requirement that there are only 2 files that can be reviewed and are allowed to be submitted. And also keep in mind that those 2 files combined cannot exceed 125 pages. A little bit more information about the submission process. If you already have grants, you probably already have a SAM and a UEI and a grants.gov account, but it's really important that you make sure that your organization is up to date and has an active system for award registration, as well as the unique entity identifier and the grants.gov account for applying. Creating the grants.gov account, if you don't already have one, is easy and it's completed online. It just takes a couple minutes, but the SAM registration can take several weeks. So you want to make sure you're getting through that, or like I said, double checking with your organization that you have an existing one so you have enough time to get one. So plan accordingly, and information about the system for award, the unique entity identifier, and grants.gov information is all on page 37 of the NOFO. So Moshmi shared about where to find information about the program. Project description information is also found here in section 4. And this is a really important section because this is what you're going to be writing to and sharing about in the application. So this starts on page 27 of the NOFO. And you'll be including information in your application with a table of contents. You'll provide a project summary and your geographic location, as well as your legal status as an entity. Then you'll start a description of your need for assistance, and following the need for assistance, information about the objectives that you're hoping to achieve if you were funded with this application. So there's a good amount of information then to describe what your approach will look like. And on the next page here, I'll walk you through the approach. You're looking at providing information for the first year to conduct, where you'll be conducting a comprehensive needs and readiness assessment and engaging in planning and capacity building activities. And the project description and the next page shows us what other information you're going to walk through in your application, sharing about this project in year one, what your project timeline and milestones will be. You'll describe your organization's capacity to implement this type of award. You'll also share more about your oversight for the federal award funds and the activities. You're going to write to what your protection of sensitive or confidential information is. And then you'll also want to include third-party agreements and letters of support from your community and potential partnering organizations. So there's a lot in that one little slide. And so you really want to spend time walking through these pages of the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement to get the detailed information of what type of information you're wanting to write to for the application. So after you've read through that and plan out your approach, you also need to plan out a budget. So in this Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement, you'll notice that you're going to be providing a budget for each of the 5 years of the grant award. So you should take time to consider the unique costs of your year one, which, as a reminder, is a 15-month period of time. So you're going to do a budget for year one, thinking about a 15-month year one cost and all of the variable costs then that you'll have throughout the 5-year project for implementing a home visiting program. You're going to want to be really clear about the year one budget, again being 15 months instead of 12. And then remember that all of the future budgets, so the years 2, 3, 4, and 5 are 12-month budgets. You'll be submitting a budget for each one, but you'll only be evaluated when we talk about the evaluation criteria on the year one budget, but you still need to include 5 years worth of budgets. Note that sufficient funds should be allotted in the budget for travel and attendance at grant recipient meetings. These are notated in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So make sure that you include those and have reasonable and adequate amount of federal funds allotted to comply with the requirements for data and evaluation activities due to the nature of the activities conducted under this program. And for more information on that, you'll scroll to pages 32 and 33 of the NOFO. There are a few funding restrictions discussed in the NOFO that we wanted to make sure you were aware of. And these begin on page 44 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Major renovation is not an allowable activity or expenditure under the grant program. Tribal McVie is a service delivery program, and funds made available to recipients under the NOFO must be used to support the delivery of home visiting services under Tribal McVie program. But as you've seen in the program description, you'll be doing community needs and readiness assessment in year one should you be funded. So you won't be delivering services in the first year. Recipients may coordinate with and refer to direct medical, dental, and mental health or legal services and providers covered by other sources for which non-McVie sources of funding may provide reimbursement. But recipients may also support infant early childhood mental health consultation for support of children, families, and staff. The McVie program generally doesn't fund the delivery of costs for direct medical, dental, mental health, and legal services. So that's where that partnering piece comes in. But some limited direct services may be provided, and that's typically by the home visitor to the extent required to implement a selected home visiting model. So section 5 of the NOFO, which starts on page 46 and goes to page 49, is another really important section to dive deeply into and understand. This really partners with the information that we just talked about in your project description, your approach, and your budget. The application review information is what the peer panel reviewers will use to score your applications, and there's information about that process also a little bit later in the NOFO. But the applications are going to be reviewed and evaluated using the criteria in this section. So we didn't put all of the criteria here. We just wanted to highlight one or two from each section and share the number of points that the peer panelists will have to score these different arenas. I think it's really good to read every evaluation criteria and make sure you're looking at these with your approach. So the first section that they'll be evaluating and scoring is objectives and need for assistance. That section is worth up to 23 points. And a sample criterion 3 from this section is that the applicant clearly demonstrates that an evidence-based home visiting model is not currently being implemented by the applicant in the proposed service area, and that the proposed project will fill an unmet need. So then they'll be looking at the approach section, which is a 42 maximum points. So this is a big arena, and they'll be looking at your overall project implementation strategy, which has a maximum of 33 points. One of the criteria here is that the applicant articulates a reasonable approach to conducting a comprehensive community needs and readiness assessment. They'll also be looking at community engagement, where they can award up to 9 points. And one of the criteria is that the applicant demonstrates that it has involved the community in developing its proposed project, including evidence that the community desires and is invested in project implementation, and the tribal leaders, community members, partner agencies, and program participants will be kept informed of project implementation and outcomes. Moving on, the next section of the criteria is organizational capacity. That has a maximum of 25 points. And one of the sample criteria here is that the applicant demonstrates expertise, experience, and organizational capacity that will support its ability to implement high quality, culturally grounded, evidence-based home visiting services that meet the requirements of the NOFO. After they've looked at those evaluation criteria, they'll look at the budgets, and the budget and budget justification section is worth up to 10 points, 10-point maximum. And one of the sample criteria here is that the applicant demonstrates that the year 1 costs are reasonable, thoroughly justified, and appropriate in view of the activities to be conducted and expected results and benefits. So again, I talked about it in the budget and budget justification section. You'll be submitting 5 years of budgets. Year 1 is a 15-month budget period, and your peer panel reviewers would only be scoring the first, but you'll still have each one submitted. And they'll look at the year 1 budget. With this notice of funding opportunity announcement, there are also 5 bonus points available, and those would be awarded if the applicant clearly demonstrates that it does not have current or prior experience implementing evidence-based early childhood home visiting programs. So that takes us through the key points of the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement. In the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement is our link to our webpage. We think this is a really valuable resource to take a look at and see what our current grantees are doing. There's profiles there, there's success stories, we have issue briefs, and a lot of really rich content to understand the different programs that are currently being funded, and even our past funded programs have profiles. So that link is in the in the notice of funding opportunity announcement. But we wanted to just show you the landing page for that and highlight that that's a great tool for your communities as you're considering applying for this notice of funding opportunity announcement. Another link that wasn't included in the notice of funding opportunity that I'd like to share with you all is the Administration for Native Americans has some wonderful resources available for grant writing and project planning. So I'm going to put that in the chat box for you in case that you'd find that information helpful. And I think there's just a little bit more in the notice of funding opportunity announcement. If you're having questions, we want you to reach out, and our context for this notice of funding opportunity announcement for the Tribal Home Visiting Program is our colleague who took the lead in writing this notice of funding opportunity announcement. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to be on with us today, but we really thank her for all the work she did to get this published and out. That's Farha Marfani, and her contact information is there. And then our partners at the Office of Grants Management are available as well if you have questions around the budget pieces. And our lead there is David Lee, and there's his email address. I think there's a lot of information to digest when you're in the notice of funding opportunity announcement. We're really glad that you came and joined us today to take a look at all of the important parts of the notice of funding opportunity announcement, should you choose to write the application.